Boom. Hey guys, how's it going? Dr. Dan back in the house, Ozark MMJ cars. Listen, it's always a pleasure and a privilege to join you folks and get some of these YouTube videos done and spreading just good cannabis wellness knowledge. That's really my goal for all this, guys. I'm not going to be really worth my weight unless I can try and get good knowledge pushed forward and afford my patients and viewers out there with helpful practical tips, really to get the most out of life and the most out of their wellness, especially with respect to cannabis. This week's talk is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet, really, because I know patients. Today, I'm going to be talking about the tolerance break, all right, which I know is sort of the dreaded, taboo almost subject when we're talking about cannabis. When we're talking about medicinal cannabis, I do think that it is important. I'm going to try and reduce some of this glare. I can't tell if that glare coming from the back is annoying or not, so I'll just adjust it. If you guys are seeing a glare, you can put it in the comments and say, Dr. Dan, I don't like the glare in the background. Fix it up. I could do the regular background here, but I just kind of like how the sunlight keeps it nice and bright in the back. Anyway, guys, the tolerance break. The reason why I feel like it's underutilized, a lot of patients, they'll once they start using the medical cannabis or start with a good cannabis treatment regimen, there can be the tendency to have escalation of dose, just as your body goes through the natural process of learning to tolerate the cannabinoids. Okay. But what can happen is you see the CB receptor that resides in our central and peripheral nervous system. When it gets bound with the THC or the CBD, there's going to be a limited number of receptors that are going to be subsequently available for the THC or CBD to bind if their neighboring CB receptors are already bound. Okay. What that means is it's gonna be harder to find. It's gonna be harder to find that empty chair when you're playing musical chairs if you've been having escalating doses. All right, all of these spots are occupied already, so it's hard to find a spot to land if you're THC or CBD to initiate a downstream physiologic effect that involves the release of neurohormones. Okay, so that's the theory behind tolerance. That's how it develops. It's just through escalating doses and the saturation of receptors, making it harder for the ligand, which is a chemical that's binding the receptor, THC in this case, binding the CB1 receptor. Tolerance develops because there isn't an open available spot for the chemical to initiate the cascade of events. Okay, so that just happens through repetitive use, basically overuse. Long story short, it's the subject does come up about tolerance break for microdosers. Yes, still healthy, but the urgency for a tolerance break when people are using more minimum oriented doses, there isn't that much of the urgency for a tolerance break. Okay. Reasons for a tolerance break, some of them happen to be circumstantial and not the choice of the patient. They might just run out of product and not be able to access the dispensary. Their state-sponsored medical marijuana card might have expired, so now they can't legally go into the dispensary. So they could be stuck for a couple of days, which I think is actually a good thing, good circumstance. And I'll get into the why very shortly. I don't want to do too long on this video. I just want to give people really the highlight of why the tolerance break is important and how to really get the most out of it. Now, for those patients who are wise enough to electively choose on their own through their own volition to take a tolerance break, I think that's a very responsible decision. And here's why. Here's the benefit that you get from taking the tolerance break. Just how I described the binding of the THC and the CBD to the CB receptor, Once those become saturated, it becomes harder to get the physiologic effect, the euphoric feeling of feeling high. When you allow yourself to tolerance break, that will uncouple the chemical, the THC, from the CB receptor and leave a higher percentage of receptors open, such that when you dose again, even if it's a smaller dose, because there are more receptors available and open, you're not going to require as large a dose to get that effect. Okay, that's the resetting of receptors and making the receptors more available. All right, and that's the whole theory that I want you folks to catch, so that you understand why microdosing is the mode that we aim for in medicinal cannabis. All right. When you microdose, you're only using a minimal amount, and you're able to bind the CB receptors while still keeping some open and available. You're not maxed out with maximal binding. I don't think the body likes maximal binding of CB receptors. That's what makes the receptors pull back into the cell and make it harder to get that high. So when you microdose consistently, you circumvent that possibility of developing that rapid tolerance. Okay. So that's the reason why I dig into the idea of microdosing so much here for this particular talk. How to get through that tolerance break. Really, I think when you're having those days off and you're sort of feeling that feeling of, oh boy, I'd love to get high. Go get yourself busy with something else. I understand that it's great to get that little lift, that little mental birthday cake that makes life feel good. But, just to speak very frankly, folks, there is that natural high that we can get. It's out there. And I really encourage you folks to, if you're spending a lot of time with the medicating and leading a medicated life, it's good to understand the other side of the coin and let your body sort of breathe out a little bit. It's good to listen to loud rock music and go to concerts, but you probably wouldn't want to be listening to that level of music and have that much hype night after night. Exercise is also great. I also recommend for people who exercise on a regular basis, give yourself a day off or 2 days off just to let your body rest and recover. The cannabinoid receptors, they're no different. Okay. They prefer not to be hit with a constant barrage of always being bound and always having to work. Remember that when the THC binds its CB1 receptor, it has to initiate a cascade of biochemical events that cost energy. Now we're happy with this energy cost because we get a good symptomatic benefit, the euphoria, the surge of dopamine and serotonin that give us that happy feeling. But these things come at a metabolic cost. Okay. And being able to let that account replenish is always a good thing. All right. Because we have to develop these stores of serotonin and dopamine and these neurohormones that are released when we bind the cannabinoid receptors. Remember, we have to replenish these. That we don't just have an infinite supply of them. So in order to let our bodies replenish these hormones, we have to give that receptor a break. Okay, that's just the long and short of it. Some things in lifestyle medicine are easy to do. Most of the things that we try and do are difficult. The things that require discipline, those things are difficult. And the things that require discipline, I usually encourage patients to add a little bit of cannabis therapy to lower that activation energy. This is the one talk where, or at least one of the talks, I guess, where I'm really going against the grain, where I'm recommending to not use cannabis. All right. I just wanted to pause for effect so you guys could catch that. All right. I think it's a useful thing because the investment that you're making in going through that pain, and the tolerance break need not be long, folks. Okay. From what I can see, 1 to 3 days, depending on your usage level. It's really tough to nail it down. 3 days can really get you done. Most of the recovery can happen in that time. Just of note, the hippocampus in the brain takes a little bit longer to recover. But that's neither here nor there from a patient standpoint. They can't really identify the hippocampus in an anatomy textbook anyway. So, I'm not going to really worry about that too heavily. But, folks, 1 to 3 days is the tolerance break, depending on your level of use. That's a dose related thing. Those who are dosing heavily and using dabs frequently and these high dose concentrates frequently, they might need a little more than a 3-day tolerance break if they're using a lot of cannabis products. But, nonetheless, even if they are, you can bring your tolerance back to baseline by just taking a 3-day break. You can be almost like a newbie again. So if you just take a couple of hits of, just the regular bud, the regular flower, you'll be able to get that feeling that formerly you'd have to take a bunch of big rips of some, on a dab rig or a bunch of bong rips. And, don't get me wrong, guys. I know that stuff is fun. I get it. The marijuana is probably the most, one of the lowest risk ways to get a psychoactive change without toxic insult. All right. So I'm all for that. I get the recreational use part of it. I don't really hone in my talks on the recreational aspect of it. But if we are talking about recreation, I think marijuana is probably one of the best ways to take up the recreation aspect of life, because it's not toxic like pills or like alcohol. So I'm all for that. But the recreational use in those amounts, those are what lead to tolerance when done over a period of time. Okay. And in order to get good symptomatic benefit, you're going to have those cannabinoid receptors open and available. All right. So anyway, I know I said I was going to make this a quick talk. All right. So maybe I lied, whatever. Doctor discretion. That's what I'll call it. Not lying. Anyway, folks, listen, don't fear the tolerance break. All right, guys, the reason why I impress it upon patients to do it is really such that they can get the best long-term benefit and be able to have the opportunity and the privilege, of being able to treat with cannabis. With great privilege comes great responsibility, guys. I don't take that lightly. I'm in a really, really lucky position to work in the industry that I work in and to have the privilege of being able to care for patients. People putting their care in my hands is a really, really great privilege. Yeah, I'm so grateful for that. And with that, I feel a huge weight of responsibility to do the correct thing and do the ethical thing and not get caught up in this whirlwind of just trying to bill and get everyone signed up for the cannabis card. Don't get me wrong. From a business standpoint, that's great. But from a more important standpoint, I'm a doctor first. And I want people to get good results. And I care deeply about my patient population and people that are listening out there that are just looking for good tactics to really get the most out of their wellness. That tolerance break could really be just the thing that you need to get you back on track so that your use can match your intent for what you're looking to get as far as symptomatic benefit to maximize your wellness. Long-term thinking, long game thinking, guys. That's how you're going to get the most out of your years. That's how you're going to get the highest quality of life years extended or enjoyed in your life. That's what I want for you guys. That's what I'm gunning for. I'm going to work my butt off to get that for you. Okay. Listen, it's a privilege talking to you guys. It's so nice just being able to spend my time and being able to just impart some useful knowledge. Thumbs up and like. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe, guys. I always want to be able to bring you more videos. If there's certain topics that you guys want me to jump into, let me know. If you guys have a dissenting opinion, that's fine too. I love to hear when people have their input and feedback. That way I can touch on it and really just start the discussion. It's good to have difference of opinion. That's what makes the world go round. I welcome it all. Skeptics, everyone, open door policy. Listen, guys, love you all. Dr. Dan, out. Have a great week. Bye.